True stories told by real people.
Warning, very long. TLDR, my house is haunted by a very nice old man who whispers to me and sings to my son. The house I currently live in is haunted. It used to be a hospital/camp for kids with polio. There's only one ghost, and it's a kind older gentleman. He lives in the sun porch off of one of the bedrooms upstairs. When we first moved into the house, my mother-in-law was still in the master bedroom, so my fiance at the time and I moved into his old bedroom, the one attached to the sun porch. I'm decently sensitive to stuff, not to the extent of, say, Teresa Caputo, but enough that I can sense things other people can't. For a while, I would just get a feeling of nervousness and my chest would feel tight. I brushed it off, thinking it's an old house. I watched a lot of Ghost Hunters, so I thought it was the electromagnetic field screwing with me. One morning, my husband told me he had woken up in the middle of the night to see a man sitting on the bed, whispering into my ear. He said he didn't feel afraid, that he felt calm from the man, who dissipated after a few seconds. He knew he was fully awake because after the man was gone, he got up to pee. So I had my answer. It wasn't the electromagnetic field, it was this gentleman. My brother had told me about hearing footsteps in the sun porch before this, but we used it for storage, so I chalked it up to things settling and shifting. Nope, I started hearing the footsteps. They were obviously booted feet. One night I was pissed and irritated at my fiance, and I sensed an outside irritability and heard bootsteps pacing on the small roof outside of my bedroom window. Bill, as we call him, was sensitive to my feelings. I felt him sit on my bed, heard the doorknob rattle like he was leaving several times. Husband and I get married, can't take a honeymoon until a few weeks later. The night before we are set to leave for our honeymoon, I hear a male voice I don't recognize whisper in my ear, "Have fun." A year goes by and we redo the basement and switch into the master bedroom. We still hear footsteps and feel emotions from the bedroom that now is empty. Sometimes I find myself talking to Bill, just little things. A few more years go by, I get pregnant with kid number 2. We decide to move kid number 1 into the bedroom attached to the sun porch, as it's bigger than his current room, and put the baby in the smaller room. We need to redo the floor and repaint. The commotion in the room makes Bill act up a bit.
I get nervous about it. Contact taps. They say that since he isn't malicious, I can talk to him about expected behavior. I just ask him to be kind and not scare my little guy. A few days after kid number 1 moves into his new room, he tells me about how Bill has been singing him to sleep. He listens to music at bedtime that's on a timer, so when the music turns off, Bill sings to him if he's still awake. Soon, kid number 1 will move into a different room, and kid number 2 will get his older brother's bedroom in preparation of kid number 3. I'm preparing to have another talk with Bill.
Story 2. The bedroom door slams shut.
When I was young, about 5th grade or so, I stayed home sick from school one day. My whole family was out. I was home alone. Per tradition, I started watching the original Star Wars trilogy as soon as my mom left. This was on a small TV in my bedroom, and I was able to lay in bed to, cough, heal up while watching. About halfway through Empire, I started to feel tired. I turned off the TV and closed my eyes. I was home alone, as I said before, and my bedroom door was completely closed. Suddenly, my bedroom door flies open. As if thrown hard, it slams against the wall. My bulletin board, that I kept on the wall behind the door, smashes to the ground and everything on it goes flying off across the floor. I immediately throw the blanket over my head, scared shitless because I figure someone is in the house. After a count of 30 seconds, not hearing anything, and hey, I'm not dead yet, I fish my hand out and grab a bat from under my bed. I throw my blankets off and brandish the bat, expecting someone to be there. There was not. I grab my super sweet, at the time, cordless phone in one hand and prepare to dial 911. Bat in one hand, phone in the other, I begin to search the house, top to bottom, side to side. Empty. All doors locked and closed, all windows shut and sealed. All alone. Quiet. Months later, it turns out that someone had stolen from us and perhaps even was in the house. They got caught trying to cash a check. However, I don't think it was them. I didn't hear footsteps, I didn't hear any doors or windows opening and shutting. Nothing. Silence, then slamming. Occasionally afterwards, my TV would randomly turn on and go to static. It wouldn't turn off until it suddenly would. Other random feelings of spirits, visitors, out-of-body experiences, and vivid violent dreams would occur in that room. And eventually, I feel I made peace with whatever spirit or spirits were inhabiting it. This is in our family home, and that bedroom is the only room there that feels this energy. I have my stories to tell about, but my sister that lived in it before me also has hers. Dolls moving about the room at night and such. It's an odd place that my sister and I have become accustomed to. Certainly strange things still happen there occasionally, but it's mostly left empty, used only as a guest room.
Story 3. The Shadow Figure at Potter's Wax Museum.
I used to work on a ghost tour in St. Augustine, Florida. I have plenty of stories from my time working there, and it's hard trying to choose the best. I guess I'll start off with my favorite one that I love to tell, and if you are all interested in more, then I'll make a post later with more. This was a trolley tour, and I worked here pre-COVID-19 days, which meant that the tour was able to go into 2 buildings, Potter's Wax Museum, oldest drugstore, and the old St. Johns County Jail. This particular story happens in the Wax Museum. I was playing the role of the executioner that night, who tells the story of Andrew Ranson, the pirate who survived his execution. I was finished setting up the museum for the tour and had a little extra time to kill before the first group arrives, and when that happens, I like to explore the museum. There was one area that was always dark, as you couldn't see it from the hallway. Part of the setup was setting up these little electronic candles to set the mood, and these were only set up in areas that the group can actually see as they are walking past. This area was the Hall of Presidents, basically. As I am walking down this hallway, I noticed that the wax figure of Sam Houston, which was placed at the end of this hallway, seemed a bit darker than normal. I assumed it was just my eyes playing tricks on me, and pressed on. Well, you know what they say about assuming. Suddenly, I see Sam turn around and is facing me. Before I even have a chance to fully realize what is happening, Sam charges right at me and vanishes right before my eyes. I instinctively jumped back as Sam was charging me and let out a long string of cuss words, tons of F-bombs and most of them directed at Sam. As I am cursing whatever this entity is, I notice that I can now see the wax figure standing exactly where the wax figure is supposed to be. To get a better idea of the size of this shadow figure masquerading as Sam Houston, I will tell you that in life, Sam Houston was 6 feet 6 inches tall. Never could figure out who did this, as there are 2 spirits in the wax museum that are known to harass the living. A man in a top hat and in 1800s Victorian-era clothing, and a woman in a white nightgown. I have a feeling it was the top hat man, as he was known to be more of a dick than his female companion.
Story 4. The Menacing Presence in Syosset.
A little late and copy-pasting it from the Paranormal sub, but here it is again. Shortly after I was born in 1978, my parents decided to move out of NYC to the suburbs. They figured this would be a better place to raise children. They bought a house in Syosset, New York. The split-level house had 3 bedrooms, a living room, a dining room, separate kitchen, and den, which included a fireplace. In addition, there was a partly finished basement with a guest room, a billiard room, and a bar. The unfinished part of the basement included a boiler room/heater and the laundry room, as well as a toilet. We lived in this house until 1986, when my parents realized that living in the city might be better after all. Both my parents, in particular my mother, were deeply unhappy there. I remember my parents fighting and my mother crying. This may be that we were an ethnically diverse family in a largely white, conservative, petite bourgeois town. We always felt like outsiders there. As early as I can remember, I was terrified of the basement. The area by the bar had a particularly dark, ominous feeling to it. I was also terrified of the main level of the house at night and would rarely leave my room after being put to bed. I realized this could be chalked up to being a young boy, and I'm certainly not convinced that this was something paranormal, but I'll recount some of my stories and those of my family members. Most of the stories of my family members were disclosed years after we moved from the house, over Christmas dinner, when the wine had made my mother, my father, and my sister willing to share their own experiences. The earliest memory that I have in my room was waking up to the sound of cackling laughter, like that of a witch. The laughter stopped shortly after I woke up. I clearly remember hearing it and was petrified, frozen stiff. I was so scared I didn't get out of bed and run to my parents' room. I stayed completely still until I assume I fell asleep again. Of course, this could have been a hypnagogic or hypnopompic hallucination, but it felt so very real. My mother would avoid going down to the basement to the laundry alone. When she was down there, she felt something sinister and menacing watching her, eventually coming up behind her, as if breathing down her neck. I remember several times hearing her race up the stairs and slam the door to the basement shut. She always claimed that something chased her up those stairs. Indeed, a common feeling people have in basements, haunted or not. My father claimed that when he was home alone, he would hear the billiard balls, grouped in a triangle formation, break as if someone was starting a game.
He did not go down to investigate alone, but when my mother came home, he made up an excuse to go down together, and the table and the balls were untouched. There was a hamper chute that connected the bathroom on the ground floor with the laundry room in the basement. This saved you the trouble of lugging laundry downstairs. You would take your dirty clothes, throw them down the chute, and they would fall and land on the laundry room floor. Whenever I opened the chute door, you could glimpse down to the basement. In my mind's eye, there was always a face looking up, menacingly grinning, taking pleasure in frightening a child. Every time you opened that chute to throw your clothes down, it was as if this thing was waiting for you and staring up.
When I disclosed this story to my family over Christmas, some 20 years later, my sister's eyes got wide, and she said, "You felt it too?" My parents wouldn't go into detail, but they had the impression that something very bad had happened in the basement, most likely a suicide. My sister and I pressed them for more information, but they refused and played down anything supernatural. After we moved out in 1986, my parents initially had trouble selling the house. We'd go back to check on it from time to time, rake the leaves, clean out the gutters, etc. The empty house had an even worse feeling. You couldn't close up and get out of there fast enough. Every time we drove away, there was a sense of relief. The house just felt terrible. I realize all of this is circumstantial and most probably not paranormal, so take it as you will. Thanks for letting me share this.
Story 5. The Poltergeist and the Wide Smile.
When I was around 13, I was upstairs in my grand's house drying my hair in one of the bedrooms. It's a very small house, so it shared a door jamb with my aunt's bedroom next door. Over the sound of the hairdryer, I heard a sudden racket. I switched the hairdryer off and it sounded like my aunt's room was being ransacked. Because the rooms were so close, I could clearly hear things getting thrown around, drawers being rummaged through, them slammed shut, etc. Trying to come up with a rational explanation, I summoned all my courage and went to have a look. As soon as I got to the door, everything suddenly stopped. I peeked in and nothing was out of place. I was pretty freaked, but still trying to tell myself I was hearing things, so I went back to drying my hair. The second I flicked the hairdryer back on, it all started up again. This time I bolted. I didn't dare look in the room, but I distinctly remember the noise continued as I ran past. I went barreling down the stairs and straight into the arms of my dad, who was sneaking upstairs to catch me going through my aunt's things. I denied it was me, but he said they had heard me downstairs. I think he believed me when he saw how rattled I was. A few other things happened over the years, but the next thing that really sticks out was when I had moved away to another city for uni and was renting a house with friends. One night, a noise startled me awake, and I sat up to see my grandpa standing at the foot of my bed. This was the husband of my gran from the first story who died when I was young, and it was not a nice sight. He was slightly glowing and his eyes were red. He had a smile that was way too wide and filled with sharp teeth. My thoughts were along the lines of, am I actually seeing this? Yep, I'm awake. Am I sure I'm awake? Touch the bed covers. Can I feel the texture? Yep, definitely awake. Well, shit, I'm really seeing this. I sat there staring at this thing for maybe a minute before it slowly faded away. There had been weird things happening to me ever since I was a kid, and it kind of felt in a way like this was the big reveal, like it was him the whole time. Since then, nothing even remotely spooky has happened to me.
Story 6. The Handprint in the Cellar. When I was 8, my whole family gathered at my aunt's house for Christmas. Everyone was there. Being a Hispanic family, there was a number of us in the house. All the lights were on in every single room. Music was playing on both floors. The kitchen was abuzz with all the ruckus of cooking going on. Anyway, a few hours into it, around 1 in the morning, the power goes out. Everything is dark and quiet. Some deliberation later, myself and my uncle volunteer to get to the cellar where the fuse box is. We walk to the back of the kitchen, through the door, and down a flight of stairs into the cellar. This place is pitch black. There was a small window on the far side of the exterior part of the floor, yet no light came in since it was just as dark outside. I place my hand on his right shoulder as he leads me through the room, trying to blindly make ourselves to a metal box against the wall. As we slowly make way through the thick darkness, we hear something move up ahead. We assumed it to be rats or mice and moved on. We take another 5 steps when my uncle breaks the silence, asking if I had just slapped him. I did not. We were alone down there, and a slapping noise would have been heard in the quiet, which added to my confusion. He complained about feeling like he just got slapped on the back. Weird. We move on. 2 minutes later, we find the box. He restores the power to the upper floors, and the party continues as if it never happened in the first place. After a while, my uncle started complaining about some weird sensation on his back. He described it as that static-like prickling you get when your arm is falling asleep and getting slapped hard. His wife asks him to lift up his shirt to inspect, and it is when we first notice the large handprint on his back, a clear red mark placed right on his left shoulder blade and going past his spinal cord. Upon some reflection and superstition paranoia that comes with the Mexican culture, it was deduced among my family that the handprint, coupled with the noise we heard downstairs, was an actual demon or devil. We never found a logical explanation for the mark on his back. We were alone down there, and I would have been able to hear and feel some sort of impact against my uncle.
since I was directly behind him with my hand placed on his shoulder. I try to find a logical explanation for everything, but this was just plain weird and unnerving that something was able to get in between the two of us without either one noticing. The fact that it was pitch black and that we were admittedly completely exposed does not help.